All right,
Yeah.
welcome back. Episode 5, I think. It's awesome.
Episode 5, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting up there.
I know. I know. I watched like Shop Talk Show with Chris Coyer and Dave, and they're like so many episodes, and they're like 900, maybe over 1,000 now. It's like crazy.
Yeah, that's
They've been doing
pretty
it for
crazy.
so long. But
I know.
5, baby, here we are.
Yeah, exactly, man. We're getting up there. 5. We're
Yeah.
halfway to 10, so that's the
saw
first
you
big
were
milestone.
You were streaming with Rid yesterday doing some live design. I didn't get a chance to tune in, but saw the post. I'll probably catch it thrown on later or something like that. How'd that go? I know last time you said it was really great and you enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I love that sort of medium, that format. I just love I don't know, it's just something so raw, and you kind of have all these people watching, but at the same time I don't know, it's just like figuring out problems right up, like live in front of people. I don't know, it feels like quite seems quite mad when you think about it, but like I don't know, I just enjoy. I think like Rid just does a good job at like we kind of work through a few different sort of design issues and design problems. Like we were helping out. I was helping out on like some of the design work, interface work on his company InFlight that he started. So yeah, it's so much fun, man. Like I love that format. Like just jumping in for a couple of hours in Figma. We were playing around with some like empty states. And I was asking about how kind of my approach to like designing empty states. There's obviously like a million different ways you can do it. We ended up designing
Did you see the designs that you were going to be working on beforehand? Like, did you know what you were going to be doing, or when you got into the call, it's just fresh eyes going into it?
No. So he sent over a Figma file of just some of the stuff that we'd be working on and just talking through. So we spoke a lot about shadows and how we treat those. And yeah, it was shadows, like buttons and the empty states. So yeah, it was so much fun. Like I said, I love that, like just jumping into that stuff. And it's also interesting as well, like seeing how other designers like set up their Figma files and things like that, and kind of learn a lot from the whole componentizing and like variables and stuff like that. Because I've mentioned this 100 times, but I'm just not a great systems thinker that way when it comes to like all that stuff. But it's really fascinating how like people set their Figma files up like completely different to how I would set it up. But yeah, I don't know, so much fun. Like I love doing that stuff, and obviously we've got Shape now, our podcast, so hopefully we can jump into that soon. Like a few people have already asked, but we'll definitely need to do a kind of live episode maybe of like just jumping into a Figma file and just playing around and answering anyone's questions and things like that. But yeah, I love the format. I love I really enjoy it.
That's cool. I wonder when we do that, I have to think about, because like implications on folks who are listening only, and like I don't watch podcasts. I only listen to podcasts. There's like no
that's
advantage.
fascinating. So you just listen. Yeah, I'm more of a like visual, like on YouTube watching an episode. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, no, I like it's if I'm in the car, like going somewhere or working during the day.
Yeah.
If I have something visual on, like off to my side, I'll probably like get distracted watching it.
Yeah.
But no,
I just have like the
on
mini player. Like I'll have like Figma like taking up like maybe three quarters of the screen, and then like the top part's like just the mini player.
Yeah. So. No, I'm audio only. So I'd have to like, if it was an episode like that I was really curious about, I'd have to like force myself to watch it. Which I mean, not that big of a deal, but we just have to make it very clear in the episode that you can listen to this, but it's all visual. We're going to be talking about things that we're looking at, and you can too. So
yeah, we could probably just send out a tweet or something like saying, you'll really need to just watch this episode rather than listen to it this week.
I'm excited to do it though. Yeah, definitely.
Same.
We'll do something like that soon.
Yeah.
So I nailed down my next job, my next opportunity finally.
You did.
We talked about thanks, man. We talked about the Hypermode situation and them moving on with with a different direction, and myself and Mary and Alvis decided that we weren't going to continue on there. We were going to figure out what's next and started the conversation. So happy to talk about kind of how that went, how to get hired, my experience of getting hired, like all that type of stuff. It's quite a process. Different companies are very, very different when it comes to their approach, and especially larger companies, a bit more structured, tend to be
I'm really
slower,
curious about that.
It's really up to the company how slow they want to be, it feels like.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. I feel like, obviously, we were speaking before we started recording, like, about how different our two paths have been in terms of like the companies that we've joined and like the size of the companies that maybe we've joined, and obviously we've worked together in the past. But I'm curious to know how that's been, going through with a much larger company, and kind of the sort of expectations from you on your part, on how you kind of, how do you find that role? Did the role find you? Like what's that whole process like?
Yeah, I'm very grateful. So when I announced that I was going to be available, my opportunities all came to me, and I want to acknowledge that. Like, I know that that's not normal, and I'll do whatever I can to help others get hired. Uh, I've put an investment on my personal brand and my exposure and my connections and network and things like that, and I'm very proud of that. And it's definitely the sole reason why the opportunities came in the way they did. It's not always been like that, but I'm certainly very grateful about that. But going into this episode, I definitely want to acknowledge that this isn't, it's not a normal, common situation of how to get hired. But I still had to go through interview processes. I still had to talk with people. Like, I still had to, decide if this was the right opportunity for me, out of all of the opportunities that I had. But I ended up going with a larger company, which is surprising. I'm normally very aligned with or looking for smaller companies, and that's primarily what I'm used to. I've worked for a couple little bit larger companies, but you were asking about expectations. I think it's incredibly important to set expectations the first call. Like, whoever you talk to, if it's somebody, if it's a hiring manager or a recruiter, try to set expectations on, comp. Like, here's where I am comp wise, benefits wise, work location wise. If you want to be remote or you want to be in an office, if you are remote but you want a shared office space to go to, like that type of stuff. I think that there's a way to communicate that without sounding too greedy. And that's just being very clear about it. Like, hey, I'm not doing this of like, here's my hard press. I just want to make sure that like these types of options are on the table before we continue on this. Because there's certainly been experiences in the past where that wasn't discussed clear enough. And a lot of time was spent on both sides to only find out that the expectations were way off. And then you wasted, each other's time. And that's certainly not ideal. So all of my conversations, the expectations were set pretty much the first conversation. Now I can think of one that there's a guy that has, every time I became available, he's reached out and was like, "Hey, I'm over here now. Do you want to?" And I think he's great in his role. And he just happened to join a new company a few months ago that I was really excited about. Like, for the longest time, like this is where I'm going to be. Like, I really hope that this works out. And it ended up not. The company that I ended up going with kind of came in, got me excited, and ended up swooping the conversations. But this other company, I thought that's where I was going to land. I was so excited about that opportunity and the company and what they're working on. But yeah, he's always reached out of like, "Hey, I'm over here now. I'd still love to work with you," type stuff. And that initial conversation that I had with him wasn't about comp and that was more like, what's it like to work there? Why do you think that I would excel there, type stuff? And
I think that's, sorry to interrupt you, I was going to say, I think that's like such an important thing as well. Like, the fact that you've built that relationship and you've built that connection to a point where you really like that person, you probably seen yourself working with that person. And I feel like that's such a valuable point to just touch on just before we move on, because I feel like that's such a important life skill in general, is just to like build those strong, like, foundations and friendships with people, where they might end up at a company that you really admire and you really want to work at some point, and you having that connection there, like, inevitably kind of sort of helps you in a way. And
Oh,
obviously you
absolutely.
mentioned,
I mean,
you know,
like, humble brag a bit, but I'm so proud of the relationships that I've built throughout my
of
career,
course,
of like
yeah,
really, really talented people like you, like our former team, like other teams that I've worked with,
yeah,
because 99.9% of the time, the companies that I work at are companies that people that I've worked at with before are at. And that's why I'm having the conversation there, is because A, they had a great work experience working with me, either in the what I helped them produce or the way that I contributed to their career or how I contributed to the company. It's really important to have those really solid relationships in the past that you've worked with, and it feels very validating and very comforting to have folks reach out. This particular person I was talking about, I've never worked with him. He's just like admired
yeah,
my work and such.
yeah,
But most of my jobs that I have accepted are with companies that have folks that I've already worked with, or I'm
yeah,
certainly very aware of. When I was at Clerk, I didn't know anybody there, but I had known of a couple people there that
yeah,
I had really admired. In particular, Jeff Escalante. He was previously at Vercel before that, and I really
hmm,
admired him. And I was excited for the opportunity to potentially team up with him and work alongside him. And then the rest is history there, of course.
yeah,
But yeah, it's really important for me, and I know you've talked about this as well, to work with people I just really want to be with every day. Like people that
exactly,
the talent,
yeah,
of course, yeah, you want everybody to be extremely talented, but like just humans that you just love to be around and talk to and work with and enjoy creating things with
yeah,
is just so great.
yeah. I think that's really important. I think that's like a fundamental reason to for maybe going somewhere that you admire is obviously working with people that you admire and you want to work with, but also taking into account as well, um, obviously a lot of factors as well, like if you need to work in the office or you actually need to work um, remotely or whatever. But I think like that's such a like important thing as well, is actually the people that you work with and the network that you sort of kind of build around you, and I think when you do that, you almost like have the talent almost gravitate towards you as well, because you
Mhm.
know fine well how that person works, how that what that person's work's like. Um, and yeah, I think that's super important point to
Yeah.
make.
And I always want to be working with people that are better than me too. It's really
Of course.
how do you grow without like being pushed? I remember, with our team, and it's always kind of intimidating to share work, and you add that little extra sassoon to the design because you're just like, I'm working with the greatest people out
Yeah.
there, and
Yeah.
you like to get feedback from them though, but it's kind of scary at times to share your work just because you want to be
Of
as good as them.
course.
But it's the we talked about this in a past episode, like no ego. Like people are just there to create great work and help each other.
Yeah.
Just being humble and creating the best possible thing you can, and however you can contribute to each other on that, I think is really important. So also when I'm looking for opportunities, I'm looking for like how can I grow later in my career. Now it's more around how can I impact, like not just design. I think it's another point to bring up as well, is that now the opportunities that I did prioritize are the ones where I can see myself making the most impact. And like, it's crazy to say that I ended up going with a larger company than a smaller company, because that's why I like the smaller companies, because you can move quicker and you can change
Hmm.
things and you can improve
Yeah.
quickly, and there's just not a lot of already kind of set in stone stuff. But there were a few very large companies that I was talking with, and the one that I went with, it was very clear that they wanted me to come in to impact and to drive
Yeah.
improve process, suggestions, fresh eyes, and not just come in, take a seat, and do your best work possible. I think it's important to me. Like I like having that voice and that mentorship opportunity and things like that. It's very fulfilling to make progress with teams rather than just make progress myself. However, with that being said, this is more of an IC leadership type of role. It's not a people management role strategically because of the role that it is and the impact that they want me to have. But yeah, that's something I think folks have to decide, like, what type of responsibility do you want to have? We've talked about in our leveling episode of like the different levels and roles and what you'll be responsible for there. And, where is your comfort at with how you want to impact? It might even be based on your communication capabilities and communication confidence. Like, what level do you think you can operate at? Or just in a place in your career where you just want to be told what to do. You just want to, like, be working on an initiative and not have to think about the planning around it and all the responsibilities that come with that. And that's okay too. They have to have that. My favorite word for those are soldiers. Like, I've worked with some really incredible just soldiers to where they maybe aren't sitting in the room during the planning phases, but you tell them what to do and they're just amazing. Like, they just, they just
I think
that's just what they
I think
like
that
to do.
goes back. Yeah, I think that goes back to there what you're saying, how the company also wanted you to come in and be a certain way, but I feel like that, because it's obviously worked out so well, the fact that you've been upfront and set expectations, and they've also done the same. They've also reciprocated that in a way where they need someone of your ability and your talent to come in, and they know that, and like they've obviously set the expectations, and you've also set expectations, and it's sort of like works out that way as well. So
I think there's an important part too of expectations of what you don't want to do. You do and don't want to do as far as the work goes. So something that's extremely important to me is implementing my ideas. I want to be able to write code. There was a team that I talked to, I don't know, 10 years ago, and it was a little less common, I think, for that type of like design engineering, design type of role. I remember being excited about the opportunity, but they straight up just didn't move forward because they didn't know what to do with me. I'll never forget the conversation. I probably have the email, but it's just like, we don't have any designers. Like, our designers are responsible for designing and our engineers are responsible for building. And we don't even have any process in place to like hand that off. I'm like, you're not even interested in trying to figure that out, how that can work. Like, this is pretty valuable stuff. So then the conversation kind of ended there when we couldn't align on that. But I'm very clear about that too, is I think folks should, this is what I want to work on. This is what I don't want to work on. For instance, brand. I'm not a brand designer. I don't like to do websites very often. I'll do it when I have to. It's just not like something I want to focus on every day. I know engineers and UI engineers that are exactly the same way, that like they love to have one project a year that's a brand specific website with the flashiest animations and the craziest stuff, but it's like not their favorite. They want to get into the product, the logged in UI, and that's where they kind of want to stay. And I think that's very aligned with me too, of not only designing and building, is that I'm very product focused. I love to solve problems for users, for, converted folks. And when it comes to like the brand and marketing side of things, there are folks like yourself that just excel at that. And that's why I, hire and work with your type, because you all love to do that. And that's awesome. And I will help inspire and build and animate however I can to get you to be as proud as possible with the thing that you're creating. But otherwise, there are other people who are more, they're built different for that.
Yeah. So to lead on from that, for obviously the listeners, maybe there's people out there who are currently, that in between stage of like looking for a new role, or they're maybe about to start talking to like a manager somewhere and things like that. Like, what's maybe like one bit of advice you would say to those people of managers maybe reached out, listen, we're looking for this, we're looking for a designer for our team. Like, what's one bit of advice you would give them to maybe prepare for that interview or something like that?
If someone reaches out to you for the role, there's an immediate advantage. Like, be confident. Go in knowing that they want you. There's nothing better no better feeling in a hiring conversation than feeling wanted. And I think that we should definitely touch on that. I have some feelings there of really good practices that I've recently experienced. But be yourself. I think the hardest thing that I see these days as a hiring manager myself is knowing when folks use like ChatGPT to write an intro email or some sort of communication. Like, I've worked with a lot of people where English isn't their first language, and that's amazing. I like, English because I don't know English. Like,
Yeah.
that you have the upper hand there, and
Yeah.
it's okay that you can't communicate and type in perfectly written English, because I want to know and I want to read the words from the person that I'm going to be working with. Like, don't try to fake an email because it's so
Yeah.
obvious. And communicate with me the way that you're going to communicate, and don't try to be somebody that you're not. So if somebody's reaching out for an opportunity, be yourself, and even if you're the one reaching out and you get the opportunity to talk with that manager, like, communicate as yourself. They want to know who they're going to be working with, and vice versa. You wouldn't want them to, to fake anything or to pretend anything, because then you take a role and it ends up being something that it's not. But I think that's probably the most important thing. I also think that there is an advantage to maybe personalized experiences. Share work and portfolio work that aligns with what you're going to be doing at that company. And it might be different in every. Maybe you're going to talk with a role about a company that's heavily in the AI space. Gen AI. There's just so many companies emerging from this and doing really cool things. And that company, you would focus more on maybe any sort of AI interest that you have, side projects, experience. And if you don't have anything and you want to work for them, go start making, like, go start creating
start doing
things.
stuff.
And like, hey, just transparently, I've not designed or built professionally at a company yet with this, but here are some of my explorations on kind of the type of stuff that I'm excited about around this industry. I think it's completely acceptable. It's only a few years old, a couple years old. Like, this is all new to us. There's no expectation to have built or designed AI driven experiences for a lot. I've prioritized it. The last company that I was with was all AI, and the company that I'm going to now is just heavily focused on AI experiences. And designing for that generation is something that's really important to me, and it's something that I'm kind of focused more on. But so, like, when I did a portfolio review with these companies that are AI focused, like, they saw a lot of examples of my work that were more recent, because it was the systems that I built, the flows that I designed, the features that I created, all around AI interfaces and AI interactions, to where I didn't show any of my PlanetScale dashboard UI or talk about database branching and like things I'm extremely proud of, creating those interfaces for, but it just doesn't align with what they're doing. So it's not quite as valuable as a skill set and as a knowledge set for them. They want to see, what skills do you have that aligns to what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's like really important to really nail down, is figure out the work that you want to show, and figure out how that relates to the company that you're potentially going to be working for, and you might, like you said, you might be they might be like AI heavily focused, and so I feel like it just naturally makes sense to like have some sort of work involved in that sort of field. So
Yeah. I think this also, like, what I'm saying here is very specific to product and product design, product development. I don't think that this applies to brand. I think that like a brand designer has an advantage there of, you just get to flex the best, coolest stuff you've ever created, because on a brand team, like, you want fresh ideas, you want crazy stuff, because it's just so separate and so different from the product side of things. So I think that, like, brand designers specifically, and I think it's harder to hire brand designers these days. It's a not less common role, but there are certainly smaller teams when it comes to that. But that type of creative has an advantage right now in hiring, because I see so many companies trying to.
You think so?
Brand designers, so many of them. If you're a brand designer also
interesting.
that can write code, like, holy cow, Somebody who can implement those flashy, like crazy ideas on the web, that's such a rare role, just because like those types of folks are more like graphic designer aligned and have not, been in the code side of things. But yeah, I think there's a big advantage there.
Yeah. I would love to. I think I just thought of like a really good episode of like on that point that we could maybe touch on in the future. But yeah, I think like, the introduction of like shaders and things like that is almost like it's almost like Photoshop on steroids. Sometimes this stuff feels like that to me. It's like, like,
and with all the visual tools that are out there right now to create shaders, Paper has it built into their app. There's the Unicorn
like
Studio. Like there's like so many cool apps that you can just do it visually, and you don't have to write any code.
Was it you I was speaking to about that? Like how Paper, like I don't know if it was you, I can't remember, but I would love Paper to be like the kind of in between of like Figma and have all the sort of like features and stuff like that Figma has, but then like introduce like all the stuff that Photoshop is really good at, like, because I feel like, I don't know, it just was so feature rich, which almost kind of inevitably was like its downfall in a way, because it was just like it ended up silly and bloated. But yeah, I don't know. I've been loving playing around with like shaders recently in Paper, and just love some of the like I just love playing around with like all the parameters and like some of the outcomes that you can get from it. It's just like new to me, because like I don't really know how to code. In fact, I don't know how to code, and I feel like this stuff is just like that sort of merge between design and code in a way, where it's like you're bringing stuff to life, and it just feels really good when you get something. When you're playing around with all the parameters, it just feels like really good when you get that really nice outcome. So, I feel like we could talk all day about that.
I like those. I'm usually very like no code design tool adverse. Like I just the web flows, the framers, things like that. Like it just never, the code isn't good enough. But then from somebody actually like automated assumed code is very hard to swallow. But when it comes to like the shader stuff and like that, WebGL and all that, because I don't know it, because I can't get in and just like hand code that type of stuff, suddenly I'm hypocrite and like, oh, it's not, that's awesome. But there are certainly folks that I follow who can do it by hand, and it's absolutely impressive just to see how they can just build a shader and whip up a canvas tag and start writing like WebGL and shaders. And oh my gosh, it's
I mean, I've seen people use like Claude and some of the AI tools to like build out the actual parameters, and then from there just keep building on top of that to effectively like create almost like a shader like this. I'll need to actually.
I've done that too, definitely. Especially I do that with like particle emitters and things like that when I want that type of stuff. But also I feel, how I feel about vibe coding, but that's very isolated and it feels acceptable because like that's in one file and one shader doing that thing. And what I normally do when it comes to that is like creating the visual effect that I want, and then I'll take it into a different model. So I'll switch it over to I'm in Claude Sonnet 4, 4.5. I'll go back to 4 and have it evaluated. I'll go over to an OpenAI model. I'll run that result through many different models to see like if it finds an optimization, and it always finds some sort of optimization. But then eventually you're like, this is really good. I got a solid frame rate constantly, and the processor usage is none, next to none. Like it just feels really good. And again, that code is all in kind of one file. My problem is when people are vibe coding entire like system level features. And it's like so much code being packed in the code base in so many different areas. And it's much, much harder to manage. But in that type of case, like, to go back to your point of why I'm talking about this, like Claude for creating shaders. I've done that a ton of times. And I think it's an awesome way to do it. Very often can come up with some really cool concepps. And now like the Unicorn Studio stuff and Paper, like that's just like you can just turn knobs and move sliders. And just
I love like the unexpected happening, like that's what I love about it. And playing around with like that UI, and it just like comes to life right in front of your eyes. It's like, there's very little to no effort, on some of these tools. And yeah, I'm finding it like really interesting how to like, I'm finding ways to try and like implement that into like my workflow, like especially for like website design and brand design. I think it's going to be really powerful to like differentiate yourself from the sort of default shaders and the default like outputs that these shaders are given. So yeah, I feel like I feel like they're super powerful tools to kind of differentiate yourself from.
I'd like to touch on a bit of what to expect in a hiring process and kind of like suggestions on performing that, but also companies hiring, like what is good and bad to folks, like from my perspective. I think initially more for the folks getting hired, kind of going through that process, and often either somebody reaches out to you, like you mentioned, or you're applying, for something. I recently talked with a friend of mine who's a hiring manager, hiring for a role right now. Granted, it's not a design role, but it's certainly in our industry. And there's so many applications coming in, and they're just not shiny. They're just kind of like boring. And I think it's really hard. I even would struggle with like what a resume would look like. I didn't necessarily have a resume in this case, just because folks were reaching out to me and kind of had known, where I'd worked and what I do. Sure, there's like LinkedIn out there and things like that. But I was laughing about it the other day with him and his experience. And because I was thinking like, it'd be a really cool job. Like it'd be a really cool gig to work with you. And I think that my application, my cover letter would probably be something to a company that would be like, hey, I love to create awesome stuff. I love to work fast, high quality. Don't really want to deal with this, or this. Like, just want to work with cool people and make awesome stuff. Like, give me a shout if you want. Much more professional than that. But more like kind of just like, listen, like I'm no time for the BS. Like I'm not gonna like, no, this and that and this and that. Like, I just want to work with cool people and make awesome stuff. Like, here's some of my work. Check it out. Let me know. And he's like, yeah, I would call that person immediately. And that's how I feel too. If I got, when I get somebody who's like extremely professional and structured, and they talk about their degree and all that type of stuff, it's just it's kind of, who are you type stuff.
It's kind of scary.
Somebody that reaches out. Like, I think I've definitely done that. Responded to emails or DMs from folks that are just like, hey, I'm Derek. Like, I don't know if you know me or not, but I admire your work, and I think it'd be really awesome to work with the people that you work with. Like, here's what I'd love to, make awesome stuff. Love to work fast. Like, let me know if you want to chat. I'd respond to that every day. All the time of like, if I was hiring I want to talk to that person, because it just sounds like somebody I just want to work with.
It's more personable, it's like more, rather than it being like very structured and rigorous, and you're putting that sort of personal element to it. And
it also feels like they wrote that message to me, and not just like something that they're sending to everybody.
To multiple people. Exactly. I agree. I think it feels just like a far more like personal engagement, rather than, like you said, something that they maybe just copy and paste to like a bunch of people,
Yeah. And like, you don't need to send over a resume, CV type stuff. Like, if they want to talk to you, you can have that next. Like, it can just be part of the process. But like, just reach out to them and let them know that you're interested, and however you can. The thing that you would think maybe doesn't happen out of that is that it's not formal enough, it's not professional enough, so they're not going to reach out. But that's critical to know too, because if you communicate to a company or someone like that and they don't respond to you because it's not professional enough or something, like, do you really want to work with that company? Like,
true.
Is that a culture that you want to be a part of? If they think that like you can't, like, that's not acceptable.
You can't be like that. Of course.
So it's just back to like, be yourself. And I think that folks would probably get more interest in them from folks to get a breath of fresh air of someone writing a personalized letter. Try to find out who it's going to. I think that's critical too. And I've coached a lot of people on getting jobs. And I think one of the most important things to get started is, who is the hiring manager, or who is their manager? You got to do research, got to figure out, like,
Of
if
course.
you really want this job and you really want to work at that company, like, start finding out who is the leaders of that. And if you can't figure out who that manager is, find someone in the company and message them, DM them, LinkedIn, email, like something like that. Here's my name. This is what I'm about. I'm really excited about what you're doing over there. Here's how I can contribute to that. If you don't think that aligns, like, no harm. If you do, would love to chat. I'll respond to that email every day. Like, what a great, just like, yeah, like, thank you. Like, I don't have to go search through this list of people to figure out somebody that I might want to work with. Like, why not give that person a chance? Like, it was very
exactly.
soft.
Like, being proactive about it.
Yeah, exactly. But I've done that in the past too, of companies that I really want to work for, is figure out who that boss is, who that CEO is, and DM them. Like, there's not a single CEO that I have ever worked for that isn't going to take a DM that they like and hand it off to somebody. You might not receive a response from that person, but like, if you impress them, they want that type of person at their company, and they'll just copy and paste that message or show it to somebody else in the company. Like, hey, this person reached out to me about this. Like, if you want to reach out, here it is. And then that hiring manager now has your name and information to be able to reach back out. So I think it's really important, like you said, the word's proactive. Like, don't just send your information out into the ether and expect to get a response and hope. Like, why hope for a result that you can help influence?
Yeah, exactly.
It just never made any sense.
Yeah,
like,
you can actually take action,
online,
like you said,
when it comes to that type of stuff.
Like,
who is the hiring manager? And finding out about them and how I can get in touch with them. I think it's really, really critical to really invest time in figuring out how to get that first conversation, because hopefully that
foot in the door.
All you need. Foot in the door. Definitely. Yeah. So then past that, your portfolio reviews, we talked about, like, portfolio reviews being very focused on what that company does and trying to kind of share that. But even before portfolio reviews, you're going to talk with folks and they want to know what you're about and how you can contribute to the company, in that role. And I think that's where, a lot of setting expectations, like what we talked about, expectations on what you want to be doing, what you feel like your strengths are, what you feel like your weaknesses are, where you want to grow, the type of people that you want to work with. I think salary discussions should be, kind of early on. Just to, again, we don't want to waste time. You don't want to waste their time if it's not going to be able to be met. You don't want to waste your time going through an interview process where they can't meet your expectations. So I think that's important to discuss early on as well. These meetings, I think it's critical to point out that the meetings that you're having with folks, there's this kind of hidden expectation of time management, especially in a higher roles. They want to see, it's not going to be said, but they want to see how you communicate in these meetings. How do you structure these meetings? It's very valuable. So it's expensive to the company to put this person in front of you to have these conversations, even if it's their job. So they want to make sure that they're taking the right meetings. How effective can you be in those meetings? If it's a 30-minute meeting, you better be ready and thinking about what you're going to talk about and be very aware of time. Because if you are not able to communicate your responses to their questions within that time, there's this, like, how does this person manage time type thing, especially when it comes to, like, a portfolio review, a meeting that you are in control of. Be prepared to manage that time. Think about, if it's going to be a 1-hour meeting with this many people, how many questions are possibly going to be asked in there, but you're in charge of the time, not them. Like, the questions that they have, you have to limit them in their questions that they can go. So if you have 3 or 4, if you have 3 projects in a 1-hour meeting, that's 20 minutes per project. But there's going to be intros. There's going to be some early discussions. Maybe the first 10 minutes you're thinking is going to be that. So now you have 50 minutes. So you're a little over 15 minutes on each one. And you have to you want to be able to spend the time going through those, even if you're stuck on one project and that time is getting to the end of that. Because if you start that meeting off with, like, I have 3 projects here that I want to show you, that I'm excited to show you. You chose those because there's value in each one of those. And it's up to you to make sure that each one of those get the time that they deserve. So going into that, like, hey, we have, based on, watch the clock, and we have at this time about 15 minutes per. So I'm going to help us work through that, give plenty of time for questions, but there might be time that's not available to answer all of them, and I'm happy to find more time with you later on, or give you my email for you to ask follow-up questions as well. Completely acceptable. Again, it's up to you to manage your time with them, because especially if you're in a 4-person meeting, that's an expensive meeting. You have your time plus 3 other people at that company. So that's how I go about it with kind of all of those is, get into the call. Hey, I'm Derek. This is what I'm about. This is what we're going to be doing today. I'd love to know a little bit about you guys. So, can you give me a, like, what's your name and what's your role in the company? How long have you been in the company? And don't allow them to figure out who's going to talk first. This is your meeting. You're controlling.
You take control. Meeting, right? You take control.
And the names are going to be on the screen. So it's going to be, James, can you tell me about you? And like, hey, I'm James. I've been at this company for this long. I've been this, and they might say a couple little things. Thanks. Like, you don't have time for questions for them. There's no time for that. Like, so you can follow them up with questions. Like, you're not trying to create small talk. This is your portfolio review. This is not a meeting. So you want to really drive that conversation and be prepared for that. Be confident.
Of course.
I think that's probably the hardest time for folks is to know that, like, you are controlling time, and they also, again, it's not going to be clearly said, but they're probably paying attention to how you manage that. And if they're not, they're going to recognize that was a very effective 1 hour. Like, that's the type of feedback that they're going to go back with, of that, like, there was no time wasted, and we got through a lot within that hour because of how you manage time there. So I think that's, those types of meetings where you are responsible for talking about yourself, you have to control those, and that will be a positive reflection on how you manage time, in your roles. So I went through a lot of those, and they all felt very successful. Really enjoyed meeting a lot of people. Nobody really had too many follow-up questions in there, but yeah, it was good. And then from there, it goes on to, kind of later stage conversations if they really like your work, to where you might talk with some more of leadership, and you want to be focused more on kind of your role and how it impacts their initiatives. I mean, at a leadership level, they're in charge of driving the roadmap and the initiatives of the company and the goals of the company. And going throughout this, just, like, remember, it's not about you. It's a business. Like, this is a job. And as much as people want to, seem like that, it's a business, and that's why this job exists. So your skill sets are utilized to meet business goals, and they're trying to hire the best person to meet those goals. So when you're talking with leadership folks, you want to figure out, like, what are those initiatives? What are most important to that person in their job? What are the hard discussions that they have to have? What are the exciting discussions that they have to have? And then start forming your kind of role and conversation around your role about how you can support them in those conversations and in those goals and in those initiatives. And that's where it comes for me, like, impact. Like, it's really important for me. Like, how can I impact either process or output or ROI? Like, how can my skill sets fit into that? And kind of thinking about that all the time based on the type of person that I'm talking to.
So you touched on there on, like, how to, how you've someone's reached out and you've went through the process and things like that. So I think I just want to touch on, like, how long does that process typically take, like, from someone reaching out to, you've got the offer?
It varies company to company based on, like, how intense their processes are. Like, bigger companies, like I mentioned, tend to take more time. Smaller companies can move, very, very quickly. If it's somebody who has worked with you before, that there's somebody kind of on the inside that already is aware, it makes conversations a little bit, there's less discovery, especially if their role is higher up and more trust involved. Before, like, startups, I'd say an average of maybe 2 weeks, based on how I've certainly had some that I only had a few conversations with, and, like, they were very motivated, and those conversations happened within days to where they were ready to move for offers. But then there were other ones that took a lot more coordinating of people and who was going to be involved, and kind of carving that out. That took upwards of a couple weeks. Now, because of all of those in play, and certainly others were aware of others that I were talking with, that they were all like, doing what they could to move the process along, to not miss out on a hiring opportunity. I don't think any company would necessarily want to do that and drag their feet enough. But also, I really encourage anyone to like stay on them. If this is a conversation that you want to keep having, reach out to them. If you haven't heard from them in 24 hours, that next day, like, on the second day, I'm reaching back out like, hey, following up.
Yeah.
How are things going on your end? Is there anything that you're needing from me to help this along? Kind of keep them updated on where you are. I'm wrapping up some later stage conversations that are looking to go to offers, or, I've had some verbal discussions around some offers, or I have offers in my inbox type thing. Keep everyone kind of in the know about, where things are. That's good for you. And it kind of helps them gauge where they need to be. I've certainly had opportunities drop off because of that, like, hey, we're not able to move as fast as you're needing to, hopefully maybe next time we can work with you. It certainly has happened where that has been the case before. I don't think it didn't happen this time, and it's not super common, but just keep everybody in the know of kind of where it's going. You don't have to just talk to them about who you're talking with, but at least letting them know that there's other opportunities in this phase. Kind of helps them know how fast to move as well, based on how much they want to hire you. So yeah, like I was saying, stay on top of your opportunities. Like, don't just. It kind of goes back to like the finding the hiring manager. Like, don't just post a resume, on the job board, or submit your resume and then just hope. Like, they don't want somebody, they don't want to hire somebody who's just hoping for that. Like, they want folks who are driven and excited to be a part of, what they're doing, and reaching out to folks and staying on top of that shows your interest. Now there's certainly, if you were doing that every day, or maybe, every 2 days, doing that, like, it's, it gets to be overkill. But yeah, I think that there is value in reaching out, every 2 days, every 3 days, if you haven't heard from them, to just ask them like, hey, let me know if is there anything that you need from me. Still excited to continue this conversation. Even if there are specific people that you'd like to meet with, like, I'd be really interested in meeting more of the coworkers on that team, maybe more of the leadership, things like that. And that's another thing too, is the companies that I was most excited about always made time for the conversations that I wanted to have. Specifically, the leaders, the managers, like those types of people, I loved that those folks always made themselves available, and their time is the most expensive time, but they would always, find a time on the calendar that day to talk. I even had some folks like after hours. I remember, and I was so grateful for this, the company that I ended up going for, like, being on a call. This person, it was like 10 o'clock at night, but this was the only time they had available. So getting the kids to bed, and but we discussed it during that day because we just ran out of time on a conversation that we were enjoying together. We knew that we were going to have limited time, and we both agreed like, hey, we're not going to be able to finish this conversation. Do you want to make some more time work later? And it was like, yeah, I'll just make whatever work. So it was like late at night, glass of wine in my hand, just like hanging out and kind of talking. I really appreciated that. It really made me feel like this was important to them, to continue these conversations and keep them going, rather than just feeling like part of a process. So they should hopefully be making time for you and moving things along at the pace that you need. Of course, you need to be reasonable. There's a lot of coordination on their end and other folks' time that you need to respect. But it's those processes can be really great and not. So
I think anything that has that sort of personal touch, like you said, if someone's actually willing to give you their time, whether that's late at night or something like that, just shows that maybe that person definitely has a far better inclination of that they want to work with you, and you want to be able to take advantage of that. And obviously, like you said, that has to be, there's definitely boundaries for sure, but no, I think you should always try and take advantage of that sort of like scenario,
Yeah, definitely. I think I definitely want to go into more of like the processes for companies now, and like there are painful processes that you can put people through, and it's just such a turn off. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing for me is just getting into a hiring pipeline and feeling like you're just part of a system is kind of an immediate turn off. It,
Mm-hmm.
it's like with recruiters, like I understand the value in their roles and such, but when you know, kind of immediately just kind of going through the same thing that everybody else goes to, just doesn't really make it feel that unique and that special. And
Yeah.
you just kind of feel like, you know, robotic. And again, just kind of like part of a system, and you don't really
Mm-hmm.
feel like that valuable. And like, they're very interested in you, but there have been some really incredible recruiting experiences as well, to where they're really kind of moving things along for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I want to make it clear that the best experiences that I've had around a recruiting experience are the ones that make them feel like they're working for you rather than they're feeling like they're working for the company. The opportunity that I committed to, this recruiter, it always felt like she was my EA, my executive assistant. Like, it
Yeah.
always felt like that. She was always coordinating times on my calendar with the folks on her end, and
Right.
coordinating conversations based on my needs and what I needed. It was so just completely flipped from any other experience that I had had. But it just felt
Yeah, that's
like
great.
somebody was on my team
Yeah, your
helping move
side.
things along, as
Yeah.
opposed to me. Like, there were updates. They would always respond when they say they were going to respond. They would always fill me in when they said that they were going to fill me in. If they didn't have information that they said that they were hoping to have, they let me know at the end of that day. Hey, FYI,
Mm-hmm.
following up, I ended up not getting that information. I'll, you know, follow up tomorrow. And
Mm-hmm.
it just felt like a priority. You know, it just felt like they
Yeah,
really wanted to fill this role, but help folks, you know, get through it. And
of
that
course.
was, it was really really great. There was something when I bought our most recent house here, the real estate agent that I worked with said something that was pretty profound. I was telling him how like wonderful the experience was, because dealing with real estate agents is a massive pain, especially in the US. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's so annoying. And it was the same situation with him, of like, it really felt like he was working for me, and it was all so smooth. His team was always doing everything for me. I made sure to CC them on every email with lenders or closing documents, like all that type of stuff. I always made sure that his team was CC'd on all of those communications, so that if there was ever a document that like the closing agency needed, I never had to send it. They would send them. It always felt like they were working for me. And I mentioned that to him at the end of it. And what he said was, I want every one of my clients to feel like they are my only client, that I'm not, you know, currently doing any business with anyone else but them. And that's exactly how I felt. And I thought about that during this hiring process with this company, because it really felt like that. It felt like, I mean, this person is in a big recruiting team, dealing with lots of candidates for a lot of different roles, but it always felt like I was the only person in the hiring pipeline for this entire company, because
Yeah.
their team was always focused on it seemed like focused on kind of what I needed next, and things like that. I was so grateful for that, and it just felt so like smooth and comfortable, and
Yeah,
it was
that's
just
so.
very
Yeah.
impressive to help kind of sway that decision of like, they don't mess around. Like, this company can operate, you know, very
Yeah.
very efficiently.
Yep.
And if this is the type of experience that they give their employees, like, I know that I can provide this type of experience in my role for their customers. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like I keep touching on it, but I feel like that when you experience something like that, you almost like never want to experience something like that totally different. So like,
Mhm.
I feel like, in that situation with like your new role, how it sounds as though it was just such a personal touch to that
Mhm.
you knew this company were right for you, and it almost like makes your decision like a lot easier as well.
Yeah.
When you know if they are spending that much time um on this part of it to get someone into the company, fine well they're going to have people at the company that you can potentially reach out to and get any help that you need.
Mhm. I think also it was very it was very transparent. It was very clear that the recruiting folks were communicating with like the hiring manager, because like the hiring manager, the leadership of this of the design department was very involved in the process all the time. And I think that that was really nice too, is that I wasn't always also talking with just recruiters. I was also talking with folks on the team, who were touching base, the hiring managers touching base, things like that. And I loved that experience with certain companies that were like that. I mentioned, another company that I was extremely excited about. I was pretty much only interfacing with the CEO of the company. And I liked that because of the amount of context that they have, in the role and kind of what the impact would be. And it's, being directly connected to that hiring manager and them doing a lot of the follow-ups and the conversations and the coordination, and, taking their time and investing their time in that process was another, really great kind of personal touch. Again, it kind of makes you feel like you're out of like the whole system part of it, the recruiting pipeline and all that type of stuff. And you feel like it's more important, you're more important to them than just, someone in the hiring pipeline type thing. So I certainly had a unique recruiter experience with a few different recruiters at this time than I had normally, because often like the recruiter process is just a bad taste and it's just very weird experience. And but this time around I had a really great experience with some folks. But yeah, the touch of the hiring managers being involved and following up was really cool, because it just felt like again they valued me and where I was in the process. After my one of my portfolio reviews, I felt like the meeting went well. I mean, you always get out of these meetings and you're like, I hope that went well. Like I think it went well. It was actually the hiring manager that reached out minutes after, like within 10 minutes of that, with a message saying like, hey, I heard the portfolio review went really well. Like, excited to hear that.
Oh yeah.
This is before the recruiter followed up with me to tell me that. So like, that was really cool. Like, that was really, really awesome that it
was like efficient.
Yeah, so efficient for sure. And it just felt like they, the folks that are interviewing for this role, that they're very involved in it and keeping them up to date. And it showed that they were interested in how that went, versus, waiting for information to come. Like, I don't know what happened on their end to get that information. But that was really cool too. But for the folks who are hiring, like the more painful the process, the less involved you want to be in it. Like, it just shows, it just, screams inefficiency and process. And like, especially when you start off your, expectations call initially, and you're just like, I don't like to deal with a lot of process. I like to be able to move autonomously with a lot of agency, things like that. And then you go through this tricky,
like rigorous
right away. Like,
it's
just, man, it gets to be so brutal. So folks just want to be treated like a human, not a metric. And
of course,
it's the smoother those are and the easier they are, and the more that you as a company work for their success and work them through the process, even if it doesn't end up working out, like it makes that interest in what that opportunity could be so much more, so much better, so much more interesting. And you start kind of like keeping your ear out and eye open for those calls, because you really enjoy interfacing with those people. You really enjoy talking with them. So portfolio review wise, I think those are totally necessary and totally acceptable. It should be very easy for a designer to go through something like that and communicate their work. So I think those are totally acceptable. There are experiences where folks want to do like live design, and I think that some are more comfortable with that than others. When it comes to talking about engineering and code, I think live coding and things like that is just like, if you don't operate as a company in that way, why are you interviewing that way? Like, that puts so much pressure on the person. Like, give them a project, especially a designer who wants to write code. Give them a project to design and then expect them to return with a PR and a preview deployment. Like, they shouldn't be giving you back a Figma file. They certainly could, like, here's the Figma file, because my Figma file isn't going to look like what I built, because I'm not going to spend time in Figma polishing every little single tiny detail of it. You're going to see a half-baked design idea but what you should be focusing on is the implementation of it, what that looks
Mm-hmm.
like. And you can evaluate that code, send it off to your engineering team. Like, definitely, like, let me know what you think of that. But I think the live coding interview specifically, maybe even the live designing, it just sets them up for failure, because I think there's a lot of nerves involved. Everybody has a different process on how they get to a solution, and I don't think it's fair for folks to be evaluated on how they get to the solution because of those differences. Especially in the world of AI now, folks building with Claude and with Cursor and all that type of stuff, they should be able to use those tools. That's part of their process. But they might type different prompts than the person that's on the other side, would, and then they get judged by that based on kind of how they get to it, how they get to their solution. I don't think that that's fair. So I think it's more important for companies that if you're going to give somebody a challenge and to be able to evaluate, you should evaluate the solution that they came to and try to figure out like how much time did it take them to get there. I think that's the critical part, because I'm not going to sit and watch you write code every day. I'm not going to sit and watch you design every day. So,
like a live designing interview just sounds like complete hell. Like, you imagine, like, it's bad enough when you see people like pop into your like Figma file and like follow your cursor. Like, you imagine doing that like live for an actual job, like that you really want. Like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like that's, like you said, adds so much like unnecessary kind of pressure to the overall sort of kind of pressured environment already. So, I agree.
And especially when you're talking about like probably an hour, and if you're going to live design a solution with somebody, especially on a product, like if I'm getting into a conversation for a live design session on a project that they've never seen before, have no context on, I would hope that they spend the first half hour just asking questions. Like, how do you propose a solution without knowing the constraints, to have any idea of the goals? Like, we're talking about product design here. So like, there's just not even enough time to design there. But the folks that do have live design challenges, they most often send a heads up, like an email of what you're going to be doing. And this is the problem that you're going to be solving. And like, that's so critical, because otherwise how do you expect somebody to come up with a solution, that fast? I also think it's poor practice to have someone design or redesign something of like their company, their existing product, without having any context on like, why does that version of that thing exist now? Like, clearly you shipped that solution because it solved a problem that you took months to solve. And, you understand it so much more than me, who just found out about it right now. And like, I need a ton of context on how you got to that solution to be able to know how to make that better. So I just think that, redesigning something that exists is very difficult and kind of an unfair approach, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I would, like you said, I think if something is already shipped and you're asking for someone to like improve that, then I don't know. It's like you said, it adds like that added pressure to a situation that is already sort of pressurized, and it's tricky. It's a tricky one.
It's nerve wracking. I mean, interviews are like, if you're not nervous, like it's normal. It's
of course.
I'm sorry if you are nervous, it's totally normal. You're built different if you're not. I think there's conversations that I'll go into that I'm more confident in than others. But there's always a nerve side, especially when you're excited about a job. When you're excited for the possibility of working for a company, you don't want to mess this up. Like, you're just so focused on how can I like be the best as possible. And I think it's also okay to just tell them like, hey, just let you know, I'm kind of nervous about this conversation. So because I've certainly seen hiring conversations as being a part of hiring, to where you send somebody in the room with somebody and then you ask them, how did it go? They say, like, it was okay. Like, they seemed nervous. I've heard that so many times. And I think it's okay to just like humbly
be honest.
Say, like, hey, FYI, like, I'm really excited to talk to you. I hope that this goes well. And I'm, a little nervous. So if there's any sort of, if I'm skipping words, like, that's why. And it's just human aspect of it, So
for sure.
We all understand. We totally understand. I assume your experiences have been a bit unique as well, just based on the level of talent that you've exposed and your network and such, that your experience with hiring has probably been smoother, or have you had some unique experiences yourself?
I mean, like I said at the beginning, you know, me and you have had like very different career paths, and I feel like like, you know, you mentioned this at the start as well. Like I've definitely been lucky in the sense that, you know, my first role, I'd done like a freelance, like sort of freelance project at first, and it just kind of, that was with Tailwind. Like when I first joined those guys, you know, I did like a freelance project first, and it was just, you know, there was never an intention to go into it like as a full time position. I think we'd done like the freelance project in like say the August, and then I think it was like the January we picked up like conversation again, and it was just a case of like, listen, we worked together and like a few months ago, we really liked, you know, working together. Like, you know, it was they were looking for a designer at the time, and it just kind of happened like that, you know. So a very, you know, probably a lot easier, like when you consider, you know, people go through maybe 2, 3, 4 interviews sometimes to get like their desired role at a specific company that they're maybe looking for. You know, and then obviously at Clerk, you know, it was a bit more like formal in the sense that there was like a sort of like interview. I think I was on a call with like Jeff, and I think Braden. I jumped on like 2 calls with those guys, but again, it was a very sort of like informal kind of chat. You know, it was just like to get to know those guys because, you know, obviously Jeff was like, is he what role is he in again? It's like head of
Engineering.
engineering,
He's
and
director of engineering for US.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then obviously Braden like co-founder. So yeah, I think, you know, I've definitely had like, I would say definitely a lucky sort of like path to like the roles that I've been in, and obviously like extremely grateful for that, you know. But, you know, I think on the flip side of that, I think it's just a byproduct of like just you know, we've spoke about it on this show before, but like just a byproduct of like sharing my work online and just like sort of like giving back to the design community, and just you know, like just offering like help whenever I can to like other designers. And, you know, I feel like if you sort of kind of build up um those sort of kind of like traits and personal traits in yourself, and you're willing to, you know, be helpful in your role, and things like that. I just think, you know, I think that can go a long way, and I think it has for me, you know, for sure. So, yeah, so I think like, you know, when it comes to like portfolio reviews and stuff like that, I've not really got like a lot of experience in that part of it. But yeah, I mean, I can see how that stuff would be like super nerve wracking. You know, like I think it's already kind of difficult to sort of like talk up your work, you know, and like and talk about your work. So
I don't know. I think you would find it easier than you think because you also design with a lot of intent and you know why you
yeah,
did something. And
hmm,
I think that's the funnest part. Like I like the portfolio review. For me, it's how are they going to receive my passion?
yeah,
Because like I can
yeah,
talk for a
yeah,
long time about like why I did something and
hmm,
you know the little details. Are they going to be like what, you know, like whoa, like
yeah,
I don't think like this, so like this is not normal for me, like I being them,
yeah,
or they're like wow, like this person truly cares about their craft and like
yeah,
we need this influence, like I've never
yeah,
thought like I can learn from this. And
hmm,
that was what my experiences were, thankfully, during portfolio reviews, were more of just like it's very clear that you know have the attention to detail within these things, because I'm
yeah,
talking about like this is here because of this, and this is here because, and this solves this problem, and even things like this thing that we created. I prioritized this initiative first because I knew that it was going to set up 2 or 3 initiatives later, and then there
yeah,
was more like flashy design stuff, more on the brand side, you know, that I would share where I talk about like the highlights and the details and the you know there's a gradient here and the color shifts here based on this type of thing, and like a lot of things that they're like, oh yeah, I didn't even realize that. I was like, yeah, that's what
yeah,
makes it so great. So like
yeah,
it's really easy to communicate your pride of your work and like all
yeah,
those little tiny details that people don't notice, because when you tell them about them, they're like, oh dang, like
hmm,
that's cool. So I don't
yeah,
I think that you would find it easier than you think to talk about your
yeah,
work,
probably,
being that like
yeah,
you're like, I did this and I did this, because you are certainly designing with a lot of intent. And everyone should always be, creating with a reason for creating that thing.
Of course.
And every little
being
pixel should have
intentional.
a reason of why it's there and the color that it is, and stuff like that. And, we certainly have learned a lot from you throughout your career on, why things look better, what to do, shadows and, things like that. And for you to be able to communicate that with a team, there certainly be like, oh my gosh, like this will really level up our designs. And that's what you should be doing, is impressing them. Again, we talked earlier, you want to work for people who are better than you. I want to work with people who are better than me, so that I can learn those things. So when I'm giving you a portfolio review and teaching you stuff, it's a strong indicator right there, right away, that like this person is going to bring more value to the team.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree. I think, when you say that, like definitely, I think working with people that are better than you at wherever you are in your journey, and I feel will always be like a beneficial thing for you growing as a designer or an engineer. And I think that's like the number one thing that I strive for now is like, if I was to like jump into like another full-time position, I feel like that would have to be like a core component for sure, is working and knowing fine well that there's other designers in there that are a lot better than me, and can you can learn from them, and I feel like if you went into a position and you didn't feel that, you're probably not going to learn as much, and you're probably not going to be educating yourself. So yeah, I agree. I think that's like super important.
Yeah. So when James McDonald is on the job market again, and you go for a full-time opportunity, like what's your priorities? Like, what, somebody at your talent level, what are you looking for? What attracts your type of talent? What are your expectations there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing for me, and I actually tweeted this last week, would be to work with the people that I want to work with, and I've got a relationship with and a connection with, and I don't fully know the person yet, but I've had some sort of like communication. I know they're like a good person, and I know they like do really good work. So I think like working with the people that I find super talented and are infectious to be around, I feel like that's just such a core component to finding like a full-time role again. I think obviously being passionate about like the problem and the challenge and whatever it is that you're I would be going into, I think that's like a big thing, because I feel like I feel like you have to have some sort of knowledge of the problem, and that then kind of translates into you being able to offer your help and like communicate like solutions to those problems, So I think like that's a big thing, obviously. I think like I'm obviously, I love designing websites. I love designing brands. I love building out a brand from scratch. Like I think that was like my favorite thing about Clerk when we joined was like pretty much every single pixel that existed for Clerk, we had the opportunity to completely redesign that. And
it sounds like impact also is something that's important to you. Like how much can you impact and influence the direction from the moment you start?
Exactly. And having like that tangible sort of like work that will be shipped, and I feel like that's a really important thing, because you want people to see your work. You want to be proud of the work that you're doing, and you want that to have some sort of like you want that to be live on the web, so people can see it and have that be like sort of something tangible that you can hold on to and say like, I'm really proud of that project, like we worked on that, and it kind of puts your name to it. So yeah, I think that's probably like the other like the kind of thing I would look for as well in a role. And and again is communicating that and setting expectations of that's what I would like. I think that's probably the three things that I would look for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. But if you went into like a hiring process, like you knew that a company was hiring and you were interested in joining that company, what would you hope that the, whole process looked like compared to like, what I just shared with my processes and all that?
Yeah, well, I feel like it. You obviously want to you obviously want to like have some sort of like connection with that person, and you want to make sure it's like a very personal like experience, just like you touched on earlier,
Mhm.
where the recruiter you felt like was super helpful and like answering you quickly and answering any questions that you might have. Like
Mhm.
I feel like that goes a long way, and it helps you sort of like understand the sort of company that this company might be that you're going through the hiring process for. So
Mhm.
I think like that sort of sets expectations from their end very early, and it sort of like gives you an idea for the sort of like workplace that you might be involved in, like efficiency, and it's that kind of translates onto you. And I feel like that sort of like experience is almost like infectious. Like you then, it makes you want to be as efficient, and makes you want to be that sort of way when if you join the company, so
Mhm.
um yeah, I mean, I think anything that makes the process a lot easier, because like you said, it's a very nerve-wracking thing to jump into, and if someone or a group of people can make that a lot more comfortable for you, then I feel like that goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. How much do you prioritize the type of company you'll be working for, like the product and such? Like, is it more important for you to work with the people that you want to be working with, or to be working with on the type of technologies and products that you?
Definitely think I definitely think there's like if you had like two circles and then they meet in the middle, like that perfect little grey area. I think
Yeah.
like that's like the perfect role. I mean, you can't always have it your own way, but um, I just honestly like I just love working with like the people that I respect and admire, and I would love that opportunity again to like be able to have like that opportunity to work with all the people that I've worked with in the past. And obviously it's difficult to do that sometimes, but I think when you've worked on like a really great team in the past, it just like you kind of almost like really want that to happen again.
Yeah.
So
Set certain
um
expectations.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and it will make you more comfortable in knowing that you're with people that you can trust and you can rely on. So
Mhm.
yeah, definitely a big component. But like you said, on the other side of that, you have to be passionate, or at least you have to be sort of like interested in the challenge that you're trying to come up with solutions for. And whether that's like a product or whatever, I think you have to have some sort of like interest in it, to
Mhm.
to be able to, come up with ideas and try and think outside the box in that sense. So yeah, I think for sure, I think it's just as important as obviously wanting to um, work with the people that you respect and things like that.
Yeah. So you feel like you can like flex on the product itself not being something you're super passionate about, but can try to get excited about it because you're super excited about who you're working with. You like this
Exactly. I
you're like
think I
a
think
more important of the talent that you're surrounding yourself by than like the thing you're making, the product or the company that you're working with.
exactly, and I think
Yeah.
like again, it's almost like a byproduct of like the people that you're working with, because if they're showing their work and they are showing like their ability to like come up with like solutions to the problem, whatever it is that you're trying to figure out, almost as an infectious, and like
Mhm.
it's like a snowball effect. It kind of like transpires throughout the rest of the company, it transpires through whatever team you're on. And yeah, I think like 100%. I think obviously it's probably a lot more difficult to be like on a team, regardless if it's like your like your people that you really respect and stuff like that. But I feel like there still has to be that core element of like being interested in what it is you're trying to solve, and
Mhm.
the idea.
Yeah.
I feel like a perfect blend of both is obviously like the perfect scenario.
Yeah. So here's a bit of a kicker, and sorry to prepare you for this one, but when a company is giving you the ability to kind of rethink rethink their direction and, giving you that level of influence to really impact the company-wide visual and the brand, the product UI, just like we need somebody to rethink this. They're probably asking that because they didn't have that talent, those coworkers that you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you think you would kind of weigh that opportunity? Because you're wanting to seek teams that are extremely talented designers who are better than you, going to be pushing you. You can kind of join their squad and have a lot of fun building amazing stuff along with them because they already build amazing stuff. But then in this scenario of us wanting to have that impact and influence, that's a scenario where there's probably none of them and you're in charge of now starting that culture. How would you feel about that? What type of pieces would you need in place to accept something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would obviously be flattering, to find that out, someone actually admires your work enough to feel like you, and obviously admires you as a person and believes you're the right person to actually have that impact, So, I think, I think obviously that's something that's obviously super important to the company, and they believe that you're the one that will be able to change that and obviously have that impact. So yeah, I mean, obviously you would, the first thing, I mean, I've I've never had that experience of being in that sort of role, maybe where you're the one that's sort of do you mean the one that's should be involved in building out that team, or do you mean they just believe that you're the person to come in and change that sort of environment where you're the one that has that influence to change the sort of kind of product decisions and stuff like that?
The latter. Yeah, you're in charge of kind of deciding the design direction now. Not even process, culture, anything like that. Talking about sitting in Figma and deciding what this company is going to look like next. Either both through brand, website, and the product UI. Because there's so many companies out there that have amazing products, but they're just not at the design level that they would hope to be. So they want to get James to come in and redo their website and maintain it, redo their product UI and maintain it, type stuff. That's a tall ask, and it's hard. That's why I'm curious. How could a company convince you to do that? I wonder what it would take to to make you feel like I can do this. Being that they clearly have not been able to do it before, but they're trying to get you in to come and do that now.
Yeah, I think you need to set those expectations at the beginning, that sort of work and that sort of requirement requires the creative autonomy that you should you need to let a designer, have that creative autonomy and agency to work through all of those problems. That's such a big undertaking, and I feel like it needs the time to sort of saturate, and it needs you need to allow a designer to just design, you need to just hire that person just to, be in Figma, if you're working if they're working with a team, you just need to let that team come up with the ideas. That you're hiring that person to do what they're best at, and you just need to let them do that thing, So I think that's honestly that's probably the thing that comes to my mind, and obviously from experience, working at Clerk, that there was just there was just creative autonomy all over the place. Everyone was hired to do their own job and what they were good at, and they were allowed to do that thing. There wasn't any constraints. It was just we're hiring you for this position, we're hiring you to do this thing and help these other people out on your team. Just do that thing, And I think that's super important, because I think if there's a lot of hand holding and there's a lot of no, but you need to do this, and no, we want you to do it this way, then you're not really hiring that person to let their vision kind of speak. You're almost just hiring them to kind of speak your vision, or the person that's hiring's vision. So I don't know. I feel like that's like probably one of the most important things is creative autonomy and agency to allow that person to sort of live and breathe the product and just like let them come up with like the ideas, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think in your case, like if you were presented that, I would suggest that you tell them that you can't do it alone. I just think it's not fair for one person to come in and just
Of
drive
course.
a
No,
complete
100%.
revision of a team that has an existing design team. Maybe they don't have an existing design team and they're not just now investing in design. It's still very difficult for a designer, especially a non-technical designer, to execute this. So, if I were you, I'd, say, well, like, if they say, what is it going to take? And it's going to say, let me go find somebody else. Like, let me find somebody else that I want to work with.
Let me find the right people,
we'll come to that agreement. Yeah. Because you can't really accept that role hoping to find somebody else, because then you're not going to enjoy it, because you're not going to have anybody else to work with, as opposed to like, if I can find somebody else and you hire both of us, I think that this would be really exciting and something that we could, excel at. If you're non-technical, then you need a UI engineer. You're going to need a design engineer, because why hire James McDonald and his buddy who is incredible at visual design, and then with a team that can't implement it? Your Figma files are going to be incredible, and that's about it.
Exactly.
And like your goals are not going to be met. So you're actually like, you're going to need a team of 3, you
need to hire
and that's great. Now, if you had like a non-technical designer that's extremely talented like yourself, and a technical designer that's extremely talented, like now you can both, enforce ideas and bring ideas to life and things like that. So, so I think that it would work really well there. But yeah, it would be really, really difficult for a non-technical designer to come in and have the expectations to reface a company, and just redetermine the company's trajectory. Because like, you got to have the right people in place to kind of make that come to life. And you use Clerkenix as an example. When I took that role there, you and I were talking before I signed, before I signed my offer, because it's like, can't do this alone. Like I'm just not. But also there was support from top down, like from CEO level down, that like, this is, you have full control. You build your team the way that you want it to, and you drive the culture that you want it to be. And that made it a great opportunity for others, I think. But I would not have been able to do that alone at all. I probably wouldn't have been able to just do it with like you or me. We had Austin join the same day too, and just start building UI with you. And then just, people just continuing to join, wanting to ship great things. And it just felt infectious, because you see these teams, doing awesome stuff, and they want to be a part of it. That's cool. But thanks for sharing that. I was really curious kind of how you might approach that conversation, because I get a sense there's probably lots of companies out there that would love to hire a James McDonald to come in and turn their company into a James McDonald level of design company. But it's not just one designer.
No, not at all. It requires
the implementation is even more critical of that, because it doesn't matter how good your designer is if you can't build it.
Exactly.
Not going to be that great.
Your engineering team has to be as good, at being able to translate those designs and get on. Like I always say that, like the engineers that I've worked with have always had like sort of kind of design know-how, and it just like helps. So it helps massively, like just if they have some level, like kind of almost like foundational level design knowledge, it just like helps the entire process, because they kind of can get on your level of thinking, and some of your ideas like are it's easy to kind of like translate that to an engineer, so no, I agree 100%. It's super important.
One thing came to mind, it's kind of off this a bit, but I wanted to point out that I think is something really important and would be a cheat code for companies that are hiring, is if you're utilizing a recruiter and you're trying to hire somebody that you're excited about, and you're touching base with them, finding out where they are in the process, like hoping that they're still wanting to talk to your company, have the hiring manager reach out for that. Don't have it's so unflattering to have a recruiter reach out. It feels like you're part of a mailing list to reach out to James and like, hey James, just wondering where you're at with things. How are your conversations going on your end? We'd love to, continue the conversation, things like that. It just feels like part of a process, as opposed that should be the hiring manager reaching out of like, hey, James, just wondering where you're at with things. Still excited about you potentially being a part of the team. Let me know if you have any questions. Like if the manager doesn't have the time to do that, like how are they going to manage you when you're on the team?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's really, I don't know of anybody I've ever seen do that, but what a cheat code for a company and what a personal touch for when it comes time for like, we're really excited about the potential of hiring this person. And we haven't heard from them for a couple of days because we know that they're interviewing with a bunch of other companies. Instead of the recruiter reaching out to find out where they're at, have the hiring manager reach out because it just feels like I'm wanted, and that's really important. And that was just something that kind of came to mind, but I think it was a great conversation. I hope it was super, super helpful for folks wanting to get hired, but also hopefully helping companies create better hiring processes to attract talent that they want to hire. It's all through experience. Our experiences are different experiences. My more recent experiences. I've definitely seen all of these processes evolve, but the want to be hired, the want to not have to feel like you're going through anything and everything and jumping through hoops to try to get hired is just, it's so important. Efficient processes are still important, and see things constantly changing. I think if I ever got on an interview with like an AI recruiter or something like that, I would just end the call immediately. But there's certainly folks that I did not experience that, but I've seen that type of stuff, and I think it's just ridiculous. I think it's so crazy. In our industry of people who care. We care about how we communicate. We care about the quality of work that we get to create. So you need to give us. We want to see the quality that you're able to provide, in your departments as well. Maybe it's just tech. Maybe it's just design. It's weird.
No, I think it's been like a valuable conversation for sure. Like I said, we've had like very different sort of like design paths or career paths, I should say, and hopefully, I think we covered a lot, in terms of like from a company side, from like an individual side, some kind of tips and stuff like that on how to navigate that sort of process. But I feel like it'll be a valuable conversation that people can maybe take some tips from.
Yeah, hope so. All right. Well, I know this, we were last week talking about we would do our Q&A this week, but then this all kind of exciting stuff happened and wanted to talk about it while it was fresh on my mind. So next week we'll finally take all the questions that we've gotten and kind of go through them and give some folks some answers.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. That'll be good. That'll be good fun.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man. Have a great rest of the week.
You too.
Catch you next week.
Yeah. See ya.
See ya.